Okay. Did you send me a list, Allison? I have a list, but
I did not.
okay. I'll go. I guess I'll go off my list then.
Great.
So Todd's here. Is Deborah here?
Yes.
Where are you? Wave at me. Okay. Christy's here.
Oh, yeah.
May is not here that I can see.
No.
Okay. Maureen is here.
Oh, she's just joining.
There she is.
Where is she?
May just joined.
Oh, hi, May.
Oh, hi, Lisa.
We're just checking to
Hi, May.
see who's here. Nancy Turner's here. And Margaret's here.
Here.
And Nancy Eichstadt is here. Did I say that right?
Yes.
Okay. Natalie's here. Libby's here. Wait, is Libby here? I don't see Libby.
I don't see Libby either.
No.
Okay, she's not here. Beverly's here. Lanny's here. And Leslie's here. So it looks like we're only missing Libby. Is that right? I think that's right. Okay, so I don't know, are there any commissioners here? I see that Laura's here and Amber's here.
Hello, I'm here.
Tracy's here. Ray's here. Did I miss? And Kurt, our IT person, and Mitzi, and Jim. Did I miss anybody? And Catherine?
Liz is
And
here.
Jennifer? Did I miss anybody else?
Well, from the
Mona.
design team side, myself, Jim Calvage, Ray Johnston, and Kurt Lango is here. So.
Okay,
Hi.
Liz
Hi.
Lawson is here.
welcome. Okay, so tonight, as you know, we're going to have the presentation from the design team, which we're excited to hear about. All of you should have received in hard copy the three options of the designs that they came up with. Hopefully you had a little bit of time to look through them. If not, they're going to lead us through those tonight, so that'll be exciting. Tonight is not a night for questions and answers because we don't have enough time. We have to get through the presentations. But if you have questions as we're going through this, jot them down, and you can always email them to Catherine if it's something really pressing that you want to know before the next meeting, which is June 3rd. You can also, because this is being recorded, you can go back and, review everything that happened, and maybe that will generate more questions. I don't know, but that's an option for you. Our next meeting, which is just Q&A for these three options, is when we can really go through and kind of do the deep dive. And maybe, and the meeting after that is the one where we'll do the evaluation in some format that maybe Jennifer can speak to, how that's gonna kind of work. And we just need to approve the minutes from May 7th. So if you can just take a look at those. And if we're ready to vote on those, we can do that. Can we do a show of thumbs up if we approve on those minutes? You can just see is there anybody that can't? Okay, let's see. Nancy, I'm sorry, I didn't see your thumb. Did you? Nancy Eichstadt, did you? I can't hear you. I'm seeing an approval from everybody, but I can't see Nancy. Nancy, can you hear
I think
me?
you might still be muted.
Yeah, there you are.
Yeah, I have not seen the minutes. Where would I find those?
The minutes got emailed to you from, I believe it, Catherine, right? You know,
Last Wednesday.
Okay, I apologize. I haven't looked at them.
okay. So we've got approval from the majority for sure. So we can move on and go right into the design presentations. So do you want to take it away, Jennifer or Jim or Ray?
Jennifer, would you like to start?
Yeah, I just had to unmute myself there.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and Catherine, was there anything you wanted to say before we got going? Or are we good to?
I think we're good to go. I'm going to talk about next steps at the end of the meeting. So
Okay, perfect.
thanks.
So before we start our presentation, I wanted to just say a few words about what process we've been going through in the last few months, and to kind of set the table for what we're going to be looking at today. As you know, we had a great design workshop a few months ago. We went through, before that, programming exercise. So we've had a lot of information that's come together to influence the direction that we're taking. And, you know, we look at the site analysis that we did, the program, the jurisdictional requirements, all the community input that you provided, as well as diving into the specific library focus for the program and the areas that represents. And what that does for us is it really informs the large scale look at the site and the context and the processes that we use. We use modeling tools, we use software that may make things look more developed than they are. So I just want everyone to be aware that the designs we're looking at represent a very thoughtful look at everything that we've gathered to date. But they also look very finished, and just because they look very finished doesn't mean that they're at that stage of design yet. So we're at a master planning phase. This is a large scale look at everything. And as we get further along in the design phases, we will be looking very much in detail at those. So I just want everybody to be aware that, you know, as some things may look very developed, it's more a product of the tools we use right now, but we are looking at a very large scale to make sure that we're testing everything that we're doing moving forward. So that's really all I just want to say, because I know you all received your packets and you probably do have a lot of questions, but we would like the chance to run through each scheme tonight and give you all a chance to have a thoroughly informed look at each scheme. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen, and hopefully everyone will be able to see. And I'm going to be the driver tonight, so be patient with me if can you all see?
Yes.
Yes.
Great.
Yeah.
All right, and I think my, all right, I lost a view of you all, but
We can see you.
yeah, I know you can, but I can't. Hold on. Oh, shoot. I'm sorry. Here we go. Okay, well, I can't see you all, so Allison, you can watch the chat and let me know if some clarifications come up that we may need to make, but I think we can get going.
Great.
Will do.
Yeah. Well, this is Jim Calvillage, and as Jennifer said, we're just very excited to share with you all the thought that we've been giving to your project, and really feel that there's so much wonderful opportunity here. And when we started this process off, it was the hope that we could create a real kind of gem and jewel, this special place for Gladstone. We definitely think that potential's there through really any of these three schemes. But to start with, let's go to the next plate. We do want to approach this looking from the context down to the specifics of the site. And as you know, it's the site's located, it's that red rectangle at the intersection of Dartmouth and Portland Avenue. And they're both major streets. Dartmouth obviously connects down directly to McLaughlin, but Portland in many ways is really the main street and address for Gladstone. It's a street that has a number of civic buildings on it already. Certainly on the site that the library is going to go is where City Hall is currently, which will now be relocated. It's almost completed, I think, in terms of construction to the north end of Portland Avenue, kind of anchoring that end of Portland. And you've got the high school, the senior center that we've had meetings at. There's the post office, fire department. And this street also connects down to the Clackamas River. So there's that really amazing proximity to nature and the connection to the natural environment, which is really kind of a key part of what makes Gladstone unique. And the site, kind of zooming in a little closer to the site, again, that red rectangle for reference is our site specifically, but Portland Avenue is a zone community commercial, and that really is the street where most of the vitality of shops and retail, the kind of community resources are really located on Portland. And then Dartmouth has that immediately kind of transitions into kind of more of a residential context, something that is so much a part of the Gladstone community is that kind of finer residential scale. And we have that proximity to that with our site as well. Just kind of sharing some of the more noteworthy buildings that are in the purple color that are either the commercial retail outlets, that kind of finer grain of commercial activity that's kind of on the south east corner. And then directly behind ours, north of our site, the fire department. It's interesting that that building's kind of set back from Portland Avenue. So it actually opens up a bit of a view corridor to the site. The Cycle Express, which has a lot of character to it in terms of that Art Deco gas station. And then the fact that, you know, most importantly, the fact that this site is on a corner where you have really great exposure as you approach it from a number of different approaches. Another key consideration too is the solar orientation. You know, if a building is oriented with a pure east-west axis, south orientation or north, that's really kind of an ideal orientation in terms of addressing heat gain and daylighting, that sort of thing. This site's a little different in that it really has a southwest orientation, which makes it more challenging. And specifically for a library where we want to embrace natural light, that's really a positive thing. But we also want to make sure that that light is filtered in a way where it doesn't create heat gain or direct sunlight where people are reading, or direct sunlight onto books that can kind of degrade the quality of those books. So thinking about how we can embrace creating a light, open, daylit space, but do it in a way where it is efficient and effective and comfortable for people.
Oops, sorry.
So we wanted to, Ray's going to kind of go through some of the community feedback, which is, as Jennifer said, has been constant through the process. But one of the more just kind of noteworthy moments was when you all kind of worked with the program pieces and started to build some various concept designs. So Ray would like to chat about that.
All right. Hi, this is Ray. And the diagram in front of you is the affinity diagram, and it shows the entry with the large meeting room and restrooms and the foundation sales area, possibly an entry court. And then connected to that, as soon as you come in, is the library workroom. And then also connected are the various pieces of the library, the collection, the lounge and study areas, the quick reads, and children's and teen areas, as well as a small meeting room. And of course, all of those ideally have a good, strong connection to the landscape and the exterior. So next slide, please. We had a great time with you all in this charrette, and there were, interestingly, there were 3 categories that the solutions of, I believe it was 6 tables, resolved into. And this is the first of them, which is the Portland Avenue frontage. So the entry is on Portland. It's surrounded by a landscaped area. And I should note, we have a 6,000 square foot library and about 3,000 extra square feet on the site, which is 9,000 total. And so that 3,000 square feet is was distributed by all of you in different ways, and you'll see it's distributed differently in each of these schemes. This one was kind of fun, and it's interesting to try and differentiate them. The collection is straight ahead after entry off of Portland, and the children's area is to the left. Meeting room is also on Portland, and the workroom's in the northeast corner on Dartmouth. Next slide, please. I should note all of these partly because of the landscape, that, as Jim alluded to, light is really important in a library, and I think each of these solutions and the solutions that we developed from these treat light differently and use light in different ways and have different challenges in terms of light. This one was the Dartmouth entry. So you see the entry is off of Dartmouth instead of off of Portland, although there's still kind of a corner presence of landscaping there. And the differentiator is that the children's area has shifted to the northwest corner, and the collection kind of wraps around some of the other program areas like the teen area and the quick access materials. And then the third option was something that obviously a lot of you found pretty intriguing, the idea of entering off the corner, kind of a natural conclusion in some ways. So there are a variety of solutions within this. Again, it's kind of helpful to look at where the big blocks, children in the collection, are. In the first one, table 1, they're kind of linked and towards the center. And then in table 3, the children's area really landed right in the middle of the library, and program areas and collection wrapped around the children's area. And then table 4 pulled the children's to the west, and table 5 pulled it to the north. So this was great and really fun to see, and we gained a lot of insight, I think. These diagrams really informed what we went on to produce. So, Jim, you want to take?
Yeah, just a site plan that starts to indicate a little more detail on the context. Obviously the 9,000 square foot site. And it's interesting that from Dartmouth, there's some diagonal parking stalls that offer some kind of quick access for short-term parking, might even provide some benefit too for deliveries and service to the library as well. And again, that proximity to the fire station, which opens up kind of almost a view corridor more to the north. We also have a direct relationship to a residential apartment complex. So how much does the architecture in the presence of the residential apartment building come into play as we think about different layouts. And then just the scale of the commercial development. As we share the various schemes, they kind of take some different approaches to the massing. You know, some are more understated, some maybe a little more grand, and other massing kind of in between. So that's another consideration that, you know, certainly you'll want to consider as well. Go to the next slide. This is the existing context, which we were struck by, that when you drive up to this intersection, one of the attributes that make you feel like you've really arrived in Gladstone is the presence of the existing City Hall building. And part of that has to do, it's one of the few, if not the only, two-story building in Gladstone. And so it, by its very nature, has a sense of civic identity and helps kind of reinforce the sense that you've arrived at the kind of heart of Gladstone. So it's also a building that, even though it has lots of windows, tends to be very internal. And so perhaps with, you know, the library, there's opportunities for creating a higher volume reading room, but being able to think about it and having more transparency and more views into the building. These are the kind of three site diagrams, and these are the genesis of what we're going to show you tonight. Option one is an entry that comes off of Portland Avenue. It has some perimeter landscaping between the sidewalk and the library to create a little bit of a landscape buffer. And then it also creates defines a smaller courtyard in the northeast corner of the site. The second option has the entry on Dartmouth. It has a slightly smaller kind of plaza or entry court that does connect to the corner, but the actual entry is on Dartmouth. In this case, we're looking at a more urban edge condition to Portland Avenue, where the building comes right up to the sidewalk. And in that case, we're able to create a bit of a south-facing garden that makes the transition back to the residential context. And then it also has a different proportioned, slightly kind of more rectangular courtyard that's in the northeast corner. It elongates. And then at the third option, we're indicating a larger, a corner entry and a larger courtyard that is to the north as well, but it pushes a little bit more to the west. So it has the potential to open up to some of the views in daylight more to the northwest, since it's not completely behind the or the fire station wall. And then we're also indicating a pretty good sized landscape zone between the sidewalk and the building itself.
So walking through each of these plans a little bit, this is the Portland entry, and the vestibule is expansive. It includes the foundation sail area. And once you enter, on your right is the service point, straight ahead, popular materials, little veering to the right, the computers, and beyond them, the primary collection. And then looking to the left, the teens, a study area, and around in the on the west side there, the children's area in its own little alcove. On the right, beyond the computers, is the meeting room, and then the workroom is just beyond the service point in the southeast corner there. And the restrooms are beyond in the northeast. All three of these solutions adopted a little different approach to the meeting room off-hours access, and that is a direct entry into the meeting room and then a direct connection from the meeting room to the restrooms. that little yellow corridor is closed off with a door during off hours use of the meeting rooms so that the meeting rooms and restrooms can really act together on their own when the library is closed. This solution also puts as you noted in the diagram before, the courtyard in the north corner there, and that does some interesting things. We'll talk a little bit more as we go through about the light factor with each of these solutions. Light, of course, is allowed in through that courtyard and really allows us to suffuse each solution with real good natural light quality, and that'll vary a little bit with each of the three options.
I think one of the organizational ideas too that's shared is being able to make sure the workroom is right near the entry and the service point desk, and making sure you've got the really good sight lines and a direct book drop into the workroom from the exterior. So really a lot of time actually we have spent with Mitzi and the other librarians just to understand how to optimize the operations and efficiencies of these libraries. So if there's only one person there, can they really have good sight lines and good control point for the library, as well as direct access to their workroom. This also, I might mention, Ray, too, the larger meeting room. Not only can you get direct access from the outside, but it has sliding doors that can open up. So that was one of the things that we all talked about, that you mentioned. How can the meeting room expand if there's a special guest speaker or an author who's giving a talk? Could you have some of the bookcases on casters so they could slide out of the way and be able to have expanded capacity for the meeting room?
Right. Yep.
So these are just starting to show the three-dimensional massing, and really in all the options, we're looking at a zone of the library where it would be a higher bay volume, what you might consider the kind of main reading room, and then a lower height that would probably be more appropriate for the meeting room and the workroom area and the restroom zone. So that's kind of a typical approach. This creates, as you saw in the plan, this arrival plaza that could have, obviously as it would be developed, it would have some landscape in there as well, some trees, seating areas. So it creates an inviting entry to the library. There'd be a covered area as you come to the front door. So there is rain and solar protection, and then also some bike parking that would be under cover. This has kind of a lower scale to the library, with a higher bay volume really coming out at the children's reading room. That part of that volume is really where mechanical equipment might be sitting that would be screened from view. Yeah, so we can go to the next slide image. This is really how you would perceive the building from a pedestrian scale, looking across at the intersection to the entrance. The clear-story window up high, though it's a really nice feature. I think it's also one of those things one has to be careful about too, because south-facing clear-story windows at certain times of the day, there could be direct sunlight coming in, or we would have to really think carefully how we're going to filter that light. That's true of the meeting room as well. At this point too, we're just showing a tone of color on to help you read the library. We're at no point, we aren't really at the point yet to even think about materials, but just wanted to make sure that it was legible, that the library form read. And then there's the approach coming down Portland Avenue. And this is an important, really important approach as well. We know a lot of people are approaching from the north heading south down Portland Avenue. And this shows a larger window into the children's area in the meeting room.
I think we might have, Jim might be frozen or briefly lost.
Ray, would you like to pick
Yeah.
up?
Yeah, I can carry on. Yeah. Yeah, so the view from Portland with the children's area there and the public plaza along the corner there. This image also shows a condition that we are working with, which is that the fire department property line has some constraints on it. We can't really put windows on a wall on that line, and not sure we would want to anyway, but that's a constraint that we have in some of the solutions. So next slide, please. This is the view looking down Dartmouth, and you can see into the meeting room there, and then the clear story above, which would be getting morning light in this case into the main reading room. This has a nice scale relative to the residential buildings along Dartmouth and the courtyard towards the corner there, the recess towards the corner, towards the residential area on the right part of the screen. Really gives a little bit of a break for along the streetscape. A nice transition to the residential areas to the north. Next slide. Okay, this now each solution has an interior perspective like this, and a little diagram on the right shows the point of view. The camera is really standing behind the service point desk and looking towards the north. You can see the courtyard there and the collection extending along to the right. Something I didn't really mention and is not really highly visible, but along the glass wall of the courtyard in the teen area is a counter looking into the courtyard, and along the reading room are a series of lounge chairs. In this view, you see in that corner, there's actually a teen sitting there, I think, kind of straight ahead and to the left. That's the teen area, and then farther to the left are meeting rooms, small meeting rooms, and the study area, and the beginning of the children's area. So, and then of course, computers to the right, or straight ahead, a little bit to the right. And you can kind of see the light coming in the morning. We need to, as this design evolves, it's got a lot of nice north light from the courtyard in the corner, but we'll need to make sure we deploy some techniques to keep it from having too much glare coming in from the clear stories, and keep the light diffused and soft and pleasant to experience when you're in the library. Like the exterior views, there are some colors added to just help differentiate the planes of the roof and the high walls and things like that. But they're ways from being an actual material suggestion, even though it looks kind of like wood. Might not be nice, or might be nice as wood, but we're real early in the process. So staying a little bit away from selection of materials so far, and really just trying to depict the volumes of space and the general quality of the library. So the next slide, please. This is the Dartmouth entry, and so you can see the Yellow is the vestibule, again, a large vestibule with the foundation sail area in it. In this one, you can go straight from the vestibule to the meeting room. It doesn't have that exterior separate entry. And once you enter, you see the computers and the service point ahead of you. Those sliding glass doors are on your left, opening the meeting room into the main reading room, and the restrooms as well. And then the workroom with its book drop off of Portland Avenue. As you turn to the north, you see a fairly large courtyard and some study table, popular materials, and a little lounge seating, and the collection in the center of the library. And then if you were to turn and look back to the east a little bit, you see the teen area, and to the north at the end of the volume of the main reading room is the children's area. This solution, because the workroom is in that northwest corner, the book drop is also in the northwest corner and is not connected to the vestibule, which is a compromise in the solution. But it does have some nice qualities. The teens are isolated by the collection. They'll be viewable from the service area, but the height of the stacks will make them a little bit feel like they have their own alcove on the Dartmouth frontage. And like the previous solution and the next one, the courtyard really allows us to put lounge seating, a little conference room, a piece of the children's area right up against it. We're kind of excited by the potentials of that courtyard to be a controlled and usable space in all of these solutions. There's a dotted line in this to the right of the foundation and surrounding that area that you'll see in the next volume or in the next image, which is a sunscreen to help control that sun from the southeast side of the property. The next slide, please. So here you can see the isometric. The roof of the higher volume, just like the first solution, the higher volume is the primary reading room, if you will. And that roof comes along towards Dartmouth and then folds down in a sunscreen to help mitigate the sun from the southeast side. That entry plaza, kind of a loggia of sorts, leads you into the entry vestibule, but also has the meeting room as a strong presence on its north side. And then you can see that the children's area and the meeting room volumes are a little bit smaller, a little lower scale. It allows us to do a nice job with acoustics in those areas while still providing a more gracious and taller ceilinged area for the primary reading room. Next slide, please. Here's the view from across the street. So again, really a kind of a civic presence. You really look at this and think, well, that's a place that I'm welcome to go and to enjoy, and it's a public building. You can see deep in, even though the meeting room is on the corner, I think we've successfully made it transparent enough so that you really will be able to look in and get the sense that this is a library and is a civic building. Next slide. Looking from Portland Avenue, looking towards the southeast, again, we have this challenge with the fire station property line and the wall there, which is has to be blank. The meeting room then also, the workroom is the next space moving down Portland, and it has kind of limited glazing, enough glazing to make it a pleasant space to work in, but it's not as public a volume as, say, the meeting room, which is farther along. You can see the glazing for that. This solution does have much less of a presence on Portland when one is heading south. And then you can see the clear story with the roof extending a little bit towards the west to help provide shade. and reduce glare as sun is coming in from the west side. Next slide. Looking down from Dartmouth, again, that very transparent Dartmouth frontage with the teen area right in there, and then the children's area just beyond the guy who's carrying a kid. And that in the foreground of that little notch near that person is a landscaped area which will mitigate the connection between the interior and the sidewalk in this view a little bit. So if you imagine that being occupied by a fairly robust landscape that helps to keep some of the patrons inside from feeling like they're too exposed to the public sidewalk. That's I think what will develop as this evolves. And then looking from at the interior, again, you can see the little diagram to the right. The service point in this case looks back towards the entry. So that person on the right is close to the entry. There's a lot of action in there, but that's entry to the right. And then to the left, you see the courtyard wall and meeting room wall just beyond that person in the left corner. And then in the distance, the children's area. It's important to remember, I think in the next phase, you can see these shelves don't have any books on them. The walls don't have any art on them. And as we add materiality and some of the embellishments of that are likely to go in, I think this forms a really nice canvas for the kinds of things that will occupy the building. You can see the effect of the clear story, and you're getting a little bit of the effect of that sunscreen on the right side above the guy carrying the kid. The clear story to the left really is facing north, so that'll be good light all day long without any mitigating measures. And then we'll have to work carefully to make sure that the sunscreen and the treatments to the right, which is the southeast, are really effective in making this a pleasant area during all times of the day. And then it'll be very nice because it will also get that light from the left side of the rendering, which is coming from the north through the courtyard. All right, next slide. So the third option, the corner entry, which drew so much interest in the four solutions that you all came up with, has been fun to work on. You enter, basically there's a plaza along the corner that wraps around the corner. The book drop, bike racks, the vestibule with the foundation sales area, and the primary entry are all part of that courtyard. So it has a nice presence on the corner. Once you enter, straight ahead you see study areas and some stacks and the teens. Along the left there are bar seating that looks out towards Portland Avenue, and there's a landscape buffer between that bar seating and the sidewalk, so it will mitigate the sense of being on display for patrons that are at that bar. And then if you look to your right, you see the service desk, computers, the courtyard beyond, and then nice lounge seating along the courtyard, and a collection, and the primary collection in the center. As Jim mentioned earlier, the primary collection in all of these is programmed at a height that will allow us to put it on casters. And so this area could be quite flexible for different kinds of gathering. There are a couple little conference rooms that are tucked into the workroom on the right, and then the meeting room and restroom areas in the upper right corner. This meeting room has kind of an ideal relationship with the children's area in that it can open up to the children's area and accommodate story time of whatever scale is appropriate or needed. And that, you know, that's a pretty nice condition. Also, this plan shows something we would try to achieve in all three, but we've drawn kind of a little patio in the courtyard. The courtyard is more extended along that northwest side and could accommodate a variety of controlled uses. So we're kind of excited by that potential there.
Excuse me, Rhea, I know we're not supposed to ask questions, but in design, option 3, I do not see spelled out service area like we do see in option 1 and 2. So where was that again?
Oh, it's right. It's just very faint. Yeah,
Okay.
the cursor is
Okay.
rotating around it there.
Perfect.
Just
Thank
right
you.
inside the door.
Got it.
Point. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. So let's move to the next image.
I guess I can
So
come back in.
all right, Jimmy's
Yay.
back. Great.
My computer died on me and I
Good job,
got a
Jim.
backup. So,
Oh no.
oh,
Okay.
gosh. Anyway, thanks, Ray.
Take it away.
Yeah. Yeah, this looks at creating a covered entry at the corner. So the roof comes out to form a protected area and picks up on some of the clues of the Dartmouth scheme, which starts to look at the idea of sunscreening. And this integrates a sunscreen on the upper volume of the building. So what it does is filter that west and southwest sunlight before it hits the glass coming into the library. And the notion that screening element can extend across the south elevation, protect and create kind of privacy in terms of views into the workroom. And that screen could come down, integrate into a garden, even become a trellis element, and then extend and wrap around the upper volume of the building as a mechanical screen wall. As you go towards the north, the northwest corner, that screening element could drop down, engage the garden, become a trellis and screen to the teen area, and then wrap around the building as a garden wall. This particular building layout also, just in terms of the massing and volume, has a little more efficient envelope to footprint ratio, which helps with some of the, when we start to look at the cost estimate, it's a good characteristic. We can go to the next view. This is a view from the intersection. Again, this one brings forward a two-story massing, but with the screening element up above, it brings the scale down, not unlike some of the retail directly across the street where there's one of the buildings has even a mansard roof. So there's the idea of how do you create a civic presence, but bring the scale down to be appropriate to Gladstone. Has nice views directly into the library from Portland Avenue. You're looking right into the teen area in this view. You can go to the next view. This is a interesting view of the building. Again, it's a prominent one. And in this scenario, because the building steps back in its massing, it creates a high kind of clear story north-facing window into the library. So the approach from Portland Avenue, instead of seeing a blank wall, you start to sense the garden and the clear story windows bringing daylight into the library. And then the screen, as you can see, that's comes down into the garden where the teen area is. And then the next view is from Dartmouth. This particular view shows the entry to the meeting room, and it's designed so there's an overhang, a roof, a protective area. So it creates a nicer kind of after hours entry to the building. It's protected. Also gives a bit of an identity, welcoming identity as you walk from Dartmouth heading towards the west, towards the intersection. Ray, would you like to kind of go into the interior?
Sorry, I was muted. Yeah, again, here's the this interior view with the diagram in the lower right. You can see the service point right to the right of the image. So this is what you would see as you walk in, and it's actually if you walked in and then backed up a little bit into the study area and looked to the northeast. So you can see that clear story that Jim mentioned, and a lot of that is north light. It's not really going to have much of a challenge in terms of screening and filtering. And you can see their lounge seating kind of behind the computers along the courtyard on the left, and the children's area towards the end. And then on the right, the collection and access to the meeting room. And the little meeting rooms to the right as well. Nice high volume space with for the primary reading room, and really wonderful proportions in this one.
Yeah, it probably has, because it's a larger room that opens up to a good sized courtyard, there may be kind of an overall impression of the library feeling larger than its square footage because of the amount of open space that in garden area that's really incorporated into the library experience. Kurt, would you
Hi.
like to, yeah.
Yeah, this is Kurt Lengo, and just wanted to talk a little bit about the courtyard and potential experiences. I think we've talked a lot about how these interior open spaces will allow light to come into the library, but also there's a really wonderful opportunity to bring green spaces into the library as well. And an important part of what we'll be looking at is how we deal with stormwater on the site. And there's a lot of opportunities to create something that's really kind of visually engaging during those kind of winter, spring, and fall months when we get, our kind of usual typical downpours. So some of the images on the left show ways that you can bring water from the roof down through channels, kind of into some small kind of water bodies. The middle one shows if you were to uplight it, how it almost becomes like a cauldron. And something that's really, something maybe that kids can't actually touch, but is really kind of visually engaging, and of course, green. Want to go. And so the next slide is, so we've talked a little bit about stormwater, but definitely depending upon the size of the courtyard, thinking about it in terms of whether it's something that is just visual, kind of a viewing garden, or something that kids and people of all ages can interact with. We love the image on the upper left-hand corner that shows kind of a viewing garden, but you can imagine these kind of large doors that could kind of open up during the summer months to really to bring in fresh air, or something that you can actually see and potentially interact with. And then some of these other images where they become almost these kind of learning gardens. Certainly there's a rich story to be told of Gladstone's kind of cultural, but also kind of natural history. So could that weave itself in the paving? Could it be on the benches? Could the benches be kind of inscribed? So these are different ways to potentially do that, and how we also might incorporate art into the courtyard itself. And then the lower left-hand one is really how we introduce vegetation, how we create really a green environment that has color and texture, and something that I think really enlivens the library experience.
So these next few slides are just kind of really a summary to help kind of start to think about what are the various opportunities and challenges with each of these particular concept options. And option one really is about fronting onto Portland Avenue. It's unique in that it has kind of the larger civic kind of plaza and seating gathering space. It also has, the layout allows for the meeting room to kind of expand out into the larger reading room area. The children's areas is somewhat contained. That's a positive feature acoustically and gives it a prominent presence on Portland.
There are some challenges with it, though. It has it's a little bit receding from Portland, so it lacks a little bit of the civic identity. Mm-hmm. I think we could get a little pushback from the teens. They're highly visible in this one, so they may not like that quite as much. Mm-hmm. And then that courtyard in the back, just to the north of it, northeast of it, is the residential property, and to the northwest, the fire station. Fire station has a tall wall, and the residences really, we don't want it to be like a publicly kind of have them perched up above this courtyard. And so there's a little bit of a challenge in resolving that and some of the other issues in this solution.
Okay. This option two, Dartmouth, it definitely has the strong presence on Dartmouth. It does have a courtyard presence that connects to the corner. It has, certainly as opposed to the previous option, it has a more kind of grand civic scale to it. Starts to address the solar orientation, although it would probably need to have much more solar screening. There's a lot of exposed two-story south-facing glass and west-facing clear-story windows that are going to have to be, carefully considered. It also has, from the approach on Portland, from the north, more of a service side of the building that is not as inviting as when you obviously get around to the corner.
And that, that has some operational challenges. That blanker wall along Portland contains the meeting or the workroom and the book drop, and those are quite a ways from the actual entry. And then the service point is at a greater distance from the entry as well, although that's not too bad because it has direct visual sight. Of the three, the connection between the children's room and the meeting room is perhaps the weakest on this one. So that idea of the meeting room opening up into the reading room and expanding is not going to be real viable in this, and certainly I don't think you want story hour to be right in the way of the entry path into the building. So, there are more challenges in this one to solve than perhaps the others.
And then option three, the corner entry. It has an inviting presence and door right at the corner. Has probably a little more modest sized plaza at the corner, which allows you to take some of that 3,000 square feet and apply that to a secondary entry to the meeting room or landscape along the sidewalk and a larger interior courtyard. This would be the largest of the courtyards and perhaps with that, more of an opportunity to have outdoor gathering within the courtyard itself, not just landscape, but more space to actually engage the courtyard. And because the courtyard slides further towards the west, it does provide views from inside the library out towards the north to the sky, and to bring in a little more daylight and make the courtyard feel less enclosed by the high wall of the fire station. I think the north-facing window, what appears to be clear-story windows as you drive down Portland Avenue heading south, it's actually, when you're in the courtyard and in the library, it's a two-story window wall. So it really makes the reading room feel probably twice as big as it might normally feel, just because of the relationship to the courtyard.
As you can see, we had troubles finding challenges for this one. We could go on with the opportunities. There are things that we didn't even list. The collection, for example, if it's on casters here, we could create an entirely different kind of meeting space by sliding those stacks to the right and having, say, an author's reading with the courtyard as a backdrop. And so in a way, the reading room in this one, more so than the others, can be made into an additional meeting space. We had trouble finding challenges. The children's area is quite a ways from the entry. So as kids come and go, they're going to be, streaming through past the lounge areas and study areas. But that's about the only significant challenge we could find in this one.
Well, I get to step in here. This section, I want to make sure that everybody understands we're looking at costs at a very high level right now. They're general costs influenced by market conditions, general cost per square foot, but they are also informed by the work that we've done to date, as well as the work from our consultants. So we have looked at demolition costs, we're looking at the massing of the form, we're looking at the exterior skin, how much of it is glazing, how much of it is solid. And then our consultants have also provided general cost input as far as mechanical and electrical systems, structural systems, right-of-way, sidewalk upgrades, utilities, landscape, as well as contingencies for the unknowns right now. So we're looking very high level, but we're not doing it in a vacuum. So we are looking at this as an informed exercise. And one of the things that we want to make sure to be clear is to help you understand, some may be aware of this, but to understand the difference of hard costs and soft costs. So hard costs often are a way you might hear that refer to direct construction costs. And these are the costs that are connected to the built project. So it's the materials and the labor and all the things you can see listed here. Demolition, and if there's hazardous underground or in demolition exercise, the abatement of that, all those things are captured in that. So it's really what it takes to build the physical building that you're looking at. So there's costs for all that. And then there's another layer of that that is put on, which are the general contractor markups. So in that number, they often will put in contingencies for estimating where we are in the state of design, construction, and index to construction start. So our costs that we've shared with you are looking ahead to starting construction in March of 2022 or spring of 2022. And then they also have things, site mobilization and their own insurance and bonding. They have their own overhead and profit. And then there may be things like corporate activity taxes that have to be added to that. So those are all the things that go in to inform this number. It's a lot of layers. Then in addition to the direct costs, there are with a project often, or not often, there are always indirect costs that are associated as well. So this is the things that aren't the buildable things. These are all the reports and surveys. They're the owner carries their own construction contingency. There's the fees for architecture and engineering, building permitting, testing, inspections, furniture, fixtures and equipment. So all the shelving and everything. Insurance and accounting, all these things go in to add another layer on top to inform the total cost of the project. And often these costs can be 30% of your total project budget or more, depends on, you know, in each individual project. So for the purposes of this exercise, we are looking at direct construction costs. So we are looking at the things that we're able to inform. The indirect construction costs will be coming from the county side, and those costs are often informed by the effort that goes into that. So looking at direct construction costs, you can see that we are pretty even with our costs between our schemes. You know, we have similar square footages. Some schemes are a little higher. Dartmouth is a little higher because it has a little bit more wall to floor to skin ratio. And the ones that are more efficient might be a little less. So option 3 is actually the lowest cost. It is the most efficient form. It's the one that really kind of gets us to that sweet spot of understanding that balance between providing an efficient building, but also getting the value of good design in it. So we just want to make sure that everybody's aware that this is the cost level that we're looking at as part of this exercise. Jim, did you want to add anything to that? Whoops, you're muted, I think.
No, I thought that was great.
Great.
Yeah, I guess I'm not sure if you perhaps elaborated just on the indirect cost where, industry standards around 30%, but that, it can be higher than that. It can range a bit. So that's really just a placeholder at this point.
It is. And we'll be going through, once we decide after this phase of a refined alternative, we'll be doing another level of cost estimating. So we'll be looking at it in further detail. Mm-hmm. And that process happens throughout the whole design process. So each phase, each milestone, you'll do another cost estimate. You'll be able to really hone in closer because you're developing more detail. So right now we're at a very high level looking at this. So I think that wraps up our design presentation of the schemes that we've put together for you all. And hopefully you've been keeping track of questions you may have, things that you want to understand more, specific things that you can share in questions through Catherine. So I think, Catherine, I'll turn it over to you and Allison, if that makes sense. And I'm actually going to stop sharing my screen. Is that okay? Great.
We're 7 minutes ahead of schedule. Wow. So I hope, did everybody feel like they got a good overview of the project? It's really tough not being able to meet for another 2 weeks, but I think it'll give you some time to think about it and go through the drawings. And just so you know, the presentation, obviously you have a hard copy. It's also online on the website. I think Jennifer mentioned this is going to be posted. This presentation will be posted, and we're also going to post it on YouTube. I think Amber's going to do that as well, so that it gets a pretty wide audience, which is great. So you guys got just a little bit on next steps. You guys got your agenda. at the bottom of the agenda are the future meetings. And, you know, we've been really anxious to jump into the meat of the project, so we haven't talked a lot about process. If anybody has any questions about it, you know, you're always free to send me an email. But so for the next, we've got a meeting on June 3rd, June 17th, and July 1. So the idea is that we do a whole session of Q&A at June 3rd. And then we're going to do a preliminary evaluation of the project using the criteria. And this will help us understand, you know, some of the more of the pros and cons, and help us get it, our understanding, help us better understand the project. And then 2 weeks after that, we're going to have a draft survey for your review. And then for the most of the month of July, and maybe a little more to, you know, wrap it up, is going to be public outreach through an online survey, a public open house, and some focus groups. So let me know if you have any questions about that. Are there any questions?
Catherine, I can just say a little bit about what our evaluation might look like. Just so, that folks, you'll be,
go ahead.
You'll be getting, we'll be asking you to evaluate individually, and then that'll probably look like a survey that you'll do in between meetings. We'll try and keep it simple and easy so that it's not taking up too much of your time. But I'll take those results from that survey and bring it back for us to have a conversation together on what kind of is emerging as a priority for you around the criteria that we established and talked through in the last meeting. So it'll be an individual component, and then coming back together as a group and thinking about, you know, kind of what are the things that are coming up for you, and then after public outreach, being able to take the information that the public is giving and recommend a preferred alternative as a group, and hopefully come to consensus on that. So the first evaluation will give us an opportunity, and Christy, I see your hand, I'll get to you in just a second, an opportunity to kind of talk it through and what's important to you. Are there features that, you know, you're unclear of, how these things all kind of work together, and then come together to recommend a preferred alternative after public outreach. So you'll be informed kind of going forward by what the public is thinking. Yeah, Christy, go for it.
When you send out the survey, it would be helpful if you said, please turn this in by such and such a date. I'm not on email every day, most days, but I know I missed one survey because I didn't realize it was time sensitive. So
I'll give you deadlines.
That would be lovely. Thank you.
Sorry, I'll turn it back over to you, Catherine. Just want to say a little bit more about it.
That's good. And then when you do select a preferred alternative, then the design team will refine that alternative and come back for a big celebration and review of that. And at that point, we would also take your recommendation to the board. So just one other thing I wanted to clarify. I know that I said probably a month ago or so that the Gladstone project and the Concord project, that the Concord project was probably going to be moving faster. And I just want to clarify that there's nothing formal has been done yet. And also at that time, we hadn't set up the schedule for the Concord group. And they are actually have agreed to meet weekly. So they're doing a lot of work in the same amount of time that you are. It's a little bit more complicated parts and pieces, as you know. But we do think, some of you know that there's an intergovernmental agreement between the city and with Clackamas County that there's some milestones laid out, and one of them is to decide that the Oak Lodge Library is located on the Concord property. That deadline's on July 30th. And so that's the deadline we have. We think that we might have an idea, depending on how the task force chairs and the task force want to roll this out, but they could make a recommendation to be on the Concord property in the month of July. So we haven't talked about that with them. We'll probably need to set aside some time to talk about that with them in the future, but just wanted to let you know where we are with that, and happy to answer any questions as well. Lisa?
Yeah, Lisa, go for it.
I just am wondering if it might be helpful. I was thinking it might be helpful to me if Mitzi or someone from the library, force that actually works in a library could give some general feedback on the 3 options. Because I can look at it from the outside and say, oh yeah, this looks great. But from a functional standpoint, I think it might be really helpful to hear from those people before we take a survey.
Yeah, and actually, I think, Mitzi, are you there? You want to?
I am here. Did you want me to go into it now, or do we have time for that?
Well, let's see.
Allison's shaking her head no.
I think what we had talked about is bringing Mitzi into, and Mitzi, you might not know this yet, but in our next meetings, when we have some opportunity for Q&A, Mitzi and members of the project management team really do kind of bring that technical expertise that you're talking about, Lisa. What's the functionality of this? Does this make sense? And you as a community task force are really charged with what is going to feel right for this community. So we do want to bring those 2 together. So at our Q&A meeting, we'll make sure that that's a part of the discussion, and Mitzi and potentially other members of the kind of project management team being able to weigh in and bring that technical expertise. Does that kind of address what you were asking, Lisa?
Yeah, it does. I don't know if you have like really strong feelings right now, Mitzi, that you could just like briefly say, about 1, 2, 3, or whether you think it would take longer than that. And
I think to do it justice, I'd really like to go into it thoroughly. So I think we should probably put that off. But I will say that there, amongst, staff has had an opportunity to review the plans, and there definitely is a favorite. Operationally, functionally, just from a design perspective, there is a favorite, and I'm happy to go through that when the time comes.
Great.
Natalie, I see your hand, and it looks like Beverly also has a question.
Yes, I'm looking at the direct construction costs with option 1, 2, and 3, and I'm just curious because I don't do this for a living. When I look at the red areas where the collections, where the books are they all the same square footage, or which one has the most?
I'm not looking at.
When I look at it, it looks like option 3 has the most square footage for our books.
I'm going to let Ray answer that question because he's really been programming just to know, the footprint is 6,000. So we've got, that's
right
between schemes. So maybe Ray, you want to speak to that a little bit more? The way
they're
it's distributed.
They're all very, very close. So they're all very close to each other, within a few percent of square footage. So.
I just wanted to know. Thank you very much.
Beverly, you raised your hand as well. Go right ahead.
Yes, I just wanted a clarification on whether Gladstone will go ahead or Concord is going to hold us up, or what, because that to me it wasn't made clear. I don't know, maybe other people understood it better, but that wasn't clear to me.
Well, Beverly, right now, everything is moving at about the same pace. I mean, we did have a little bit of a pause during the, when we all came home to work for COVID. So we're a little bit behind, but we're working diligently, and we don't really have an answer yet. It will be the task force, the Concord task force, that makes a decision on whether or not the Oak Lodge Library is located on the Concord property. Not a decision, but a recommendation to the board. So we'll need to do something formal before July 30th. That I can tell you for sure. Exactly what we do and how it gets resolved between now and then, I don't exactly know. It may be that we can just stay on track and make the task force will make a recommendation and we'll just keep sailing through. I will say though that this project is meant to be complete in October, and I see nothing in any for anything, any of the issues I see ahead of us would stall that in any way. I think we're right on target to finish the master plan when we said we would. So we have this midterm milestone that we have to figure out how to do, which is part of the agreement with Gladstone. Does that make sense, or did I just?
Well, it does somewhat, but I still have a question. We have the proposed 3 different plans.
Yeah.
Are they at that same point?
Tomorrow night, because their project is more complicated, they're actually going to take 2 meetings to review the design. So tomorrow night, they'll see half of it, and then next Thursday, they'll see the other half. So then in 2 weeks, they'll be at about the same place again because they'll be doing Q&A.
Well, how though are you able to do designs for those if they've not decided if it's going to be in the Concord School or not?
Well, part of our discussion with them is that they wanted to see options, and we were looking at it as a first option for them so they could decide whether or not it was feasible. Otherwise, it would be really hard to determine. So we're going to see if they agree that some of these options do look feasible. I think that they will see that, I hope they will see that they're feasible. There's some really great stuff that the design team has come up with. And their presentation, by the way, is posted online as well. So you can take a look at that.
Well, it's just that I think with all of us who have been looking forward to a new library for so long, we don't want to be held back in any way. We want to forge forward.
I know. We are forging forward.
So we're closing in on the end of our meeting, and we do want to make just a little bit of time for public comment, but I saw a hand from Christy and a very cozy looking Lisa as well. So maybe Christy and then Lisa.
So just real quick to clarify, Concord does not have a definitive site. Is that correct?
That's true.
Thank you.
And mine is just a segue. So they need to decide whether the Concord site is the actual site before they really can definitively make a choice on options. Is that correct?
Yeah, I think so. I don't think we would further something if they weren't sure that it was feasible.
Okay. So I think, is there any public comment? I think that's where we are.
Perfect. So if you are observing, I know that there are 3 folks in the attendees list. If you'd like to give public comment, you can go ahead and raise your hand by hovering over your name in the participants window and raising your hand. Or if you're able to chat, you can go ahead and type on in the chat if you'd like to give public comment. I'm not seeing anything. We'll give it another minute. Okay. If any of our 3 attendees were hoping to give public comment and you were stymied by technical difficulties, please do feel free to submit public comment via email before or after the meeting, and we can make sure that that is circulated with task force members. So we'll close public comment, and back over to you, Lisa.
Thanks everybody for being so patient and listening to the options. We talked about whether or not, we should allow people to chat during the presentations, but we just felt like it wouldn't give the design team enough time to really thoroughly go through their explanation. So we broke it up into sections. So again, if you have questions, you can review because this whole thing's been recorded. And then you can shoot any questions that, are really pressing questions to Catherine, and she can give them to the design team, and then maybe they can be ready to address those questions at the next QA meeting. So other than that, I think we are ready to adjourn. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot.
Bye.
Hey, Lisa,
Thank you, everybody.
Lisa,
Bye.
if you're not too cozy, would you mind just staying on the line?
Yes.
Cool, thanks.
Catherine, I got lots of questions.